Hello, America. As we look ahead to President Donald Trump's second term, there's a lot of talk about his administration doubling down on tariffs on Chinese imports. Now, you and I know the goal here is to protect American jobs and fix those huge trade imbalances with China. But, folks, we've got to consider the big picture. These tariffs are like tough medicine. They might sting a bit at first, but they're supposed to get us back on track, right? Well, it's not all smooth sailing. You see, during Trump's first term, he slapped tariffs on all sorts of Chinese goods, aiming to boost our domestic industries that have been hammered by unfair competition. But here's the kicker. These tariffs, they work like a tax, and who ends up paying that tax? Well, it's us, the consumers. After these tariffs hit, prices for things like electronics and building materials went up by 10 to 30%. That's money right out of your pocket. And it's not just about paying more at the store. These tariffs have had some tough consequences for jobs, too. Especially in manufacturing. Steel tariffs alone led to about 75,000 fewer jobs in that sector. It's a tough pill to swallow when you're trying to protect these very jobs. Now, with talks of ramping up these tariffs, we could be in for more rough waters. More tariffs could mean higher costs for companies that rely on parts from China, and that could mean delays and even less competitiveness for American businesses. And don't get me started on inflation. Even our Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, is worried these new tariffs could make it harder to keep prices down. But here's a part that really grinds my gears. Our farmers in the Midwest are caught in the crossfire. China's not just sitting back, they're hitting back with their own tariffs. And what does that mean for our folks on the farms? They're selling less and earning less because China's buying more from Brazil and Argentina now. In fact, Brazil's shipped over $58 billion in agricultural products to China, outpacing us and becoming the big player in soybeans and corn. Now, I'm all for standing up to China and making sure we're getting a fair deal, but we've got to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. We need a strategy that protects our workers without putting them out of jobs. We need smart tariffs that pressure China but don't push our own people to the brink. Well, folks, let's dive a bit deeper into this trade tangle with China. Now, China's been making some bold moves in agriculture and energy, and we need to understand just what that means for us here in the States. In 2023, can you believe it? China got 75% of its soybeans from Brazil. That's 75.6 million tons. They're not just buying up soybeans, they're beefing up their own agricultural capabilities to make sure they're not as dependent on anybody else, not even us. They're pumping money into their farms, aiming to lock down their food security by enhancing production and even getting into overseas farming investments. This isn't just about soybeans, folks, it's about control over global food supplies. And it's not just the fields they're focusing on. They've poured a whopping $676 billion into their energy sector. China's now the world's largest investor in clean energy. They're pushing hard into high-tech manufacturing, especially in areas that are crucial for the future, like silicon wafers, solar cells, and electric vehicles. These aren't just investments. These are statements. They're gearing up to be less and less reliant on foreign tech, bolstering their economy with hefty government subsidies to these sectors. This is a clear signal they're playing the long game in the tech race. Turning back to the trade drama between the U.S. and China, let's not forget how this all started. Back in 2018, President Trump took a bold stand, slapping tariffs on steel and aluminum, citing national security. A move aimed at shielding our industries from what he called unfair trade practices by China. But it didn't stop there. Under Section 301 of the Trade Act, we targeted a broader swath of Chinese imports, trying to hit back at intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. We're talking about $50 billion in Chinese goods, focusing on those sectors where the tech battle really heats up, like machinery and aerospace. But here's the kicker. These tariffs sparked a real tit-for-tat. China didn't just sit back, they hit back, and it's reshaped the way they deal with the world. They've cut down on imports from us, turned to other markets, and pumped cash into their industries. What we've got now is a high-stakes game that's rearranging global trade and supply chains. Now, let me tell you, this isn't just about trade deficits or soybeans. It's about who holds the keys to the kingdom in the 21st century, whether we're talking food, tech, or energy. These moves by China, they're strategic, aimed at reducing their vulnerability and giving them an edge in global economics and politics. As Americans, we need to watch this closely. We've got to be sharp, strategic, and ready to stand up for our interests, making sure we're not just participants but leaders on the world stage. I have a simple favor to ask. If you're finding this discussion interesting, please give it a thumbs up. Your likes and comments mean a lot to us and help others find this content. If you haven't already, consider watching the whole video to support our channel. Your engagement is crucial and enables us to keep providing detailed analyses of global events. Thank you for being a part of our community. Folks, let's dig into some of the criticism and the hard-hitting impacts of these tariffs we've been wrestling with. Critics, and I'm talking about some serious economic minds here, they've been pointing out that these tariffs might be hitting our own American businesses harder than anyone else. The very industries we're trying to protect are the ones coughing up more dough because the cost of imported materials has skyrocketed. And let's not overlook the complexity it's added to our supply chains. It's like throwing a wrench in the gears. Everything gets slower and costs climb. Now there's been some chatter about whether slapping these tariffs under the banner of national security was really the way to go. Some folks are saying it seems more like a power play to get economic leverage rather than a true security move. And you know what? That debate is heating up. By 2020, this trade tiff turned into a full-blown trade war, and it was no small affair. Both the U.S. and China went all in, slapping hefty tariffs on each other's goods, billions and billions of dollars worth. This cranked up the cost for American goods in China, and suddenly our goods weren't looking so competitive anymore. China even dialed down their tariffs on other countries, making our products look even pricier by comparison. From 3.1% in 2017, the average tariff rate on Chinese imports shot up to 19.3% by 2020. And in return, China boosted their tariffs on American goods from 8% to a steep 20.3%. This tit-for-tat really put the brakes on trade, with American exports, especially agricultural ones like soybeans, taking a nosedive. Fast forward to now, 2024, and this roller coaster hasn't stopped. The Biden administration is talking about jacking up tariffs even further on some key Chinese products by 2025, things like solar wafers and polysilicon. And China? They're not just sitting on their hands, they've clamped down on exporting crucial minerals and even graphite, which is big for industries like electric vehicles. It's a chess game and both sides are playing hard. And now about our farmers, God bless them, they're really feeling the pinch. Our agricultural exports to China have plummeted. Back in 2016, we were supplying about 40% of China's soybeans. But now, it's down to about 18%. Meanwhile, Brazil's filled that gap, soaring from 46% to 76%. It's a major shift, driven by those retaliatory tariffs from China back in 2018. Pushing Chinese buyers to lock in deals with South America instead. And it's not just soybeans, corn, another biggie, has seen a similar trend. Brazil has zoomed past us as China's go-to supplier. All the while, China's been beefing up their own agricultural production to keep their food supply steady and less dependent on imports like ours. Folks, this is more than a trade war, it's a signal of shifting global powers in agriculture and trade. We've got to stay sharp and adapt if we want to keep our edge. It's all about staying competitive while looking out for our own. Folks, let's talk about the stark realities American industries are facing due to these evolving trade wars, particularly how our agriculture and recycling sectors are taking some heavy hits. Now, American cotton, a staple of our agricultural exports, has seen its sales plummet to a 9-year low as China turns away from us and boosts its own textile industry. They've been diversifying, getting their cotton from other places and ramping up production at home. What does this mean for our cotton farmers back home? Significant revenue losses, that's what. But it doesn't stop with cotton. Our meat exports are also feeling the pinch. Purchases of American pork by China have dropped to 6-year lows, and beef isn't doing much better, hitting 4-year lows. This isn't just happenstance, it's part of China's bigger plan to strengthen its own livestock industry and find other protein sources from places like Europe and South America. Even our sorghum, a less talked about crop, has seen its demand in China fall by a whopping 60.8% year over year. This strategic shift by China spreads beyond agriculture. It's also about industrial goods, especially in the recycling sector. Before these trade tensions skyrocketed, China was the world's largest importer of U.S. scrap materials like copper, plastics, and paper. But then 2018 rolls around and boom, China clamps down with stricter policies and outright bans on various types of waste, citing environmental concerns. This move was a gut punch to our recycling industry, leading to a drop in scrap copper exports by more than 50% between 2017 and 2018. The fallout? Many of our recycling facilities had to scale back, cut jobs, and deal with slumping revenues. Some states even reported a drop in recycling revenues by up to 30%. And let's not overlook the broader impact here. The sudden loss of China as a market created a surplus of recyclables in the U.S., overwhelming our processing capabilities and inflating costs for our local governments. While other Southeast Asian markets popped up as alternatives, they too started setting limits, further cramping our style. Back to the farms, our soybean farmers have been hit hard. With China buying less, many farmers have struggled just to break even, with some unable to keep their farms afloat. The ripple effects are brutal. Reduced farm incomes mean lower property values, less consumer spending, and fewer jobs in local transportation, storage, and logistics that hinge on robust agricultural trade. This isn't just an economic issue. It's a crisis hitting real people, real families, right where it hurts, in their livelihoods and communities. These aren't just numbers on a page. They're stories of American workers and families facing real challenges. We need policies that not only counter unfair trade practices, but also support and protect our own industries from becoming collateral damage in this global trade standoff. Hello, folks. Let's talk about the rough seas our industrial and manufacturing sectors are navigating right now, particularly the impact of shrinking exports and rising trade tensions with China. As many of you know, the U.S. industrial base has taken a hit, especially in areas like scrap metal exports. When China dialed back its demand, plants had to shut down, folks lost jobs, and production schedules thinned out. This isn't just about fewer sales, it's about losing a foothold in the global market that others are only too eager to fill. And with each passing month, our trade deficit has widened, damping down the overall economic growth and cranking up the unemployment rates, especially in regions that thrive on exporting goods. Now, the intention behind U.S. tariffs and sanctions was clear: to correct trade imbalances and protect our intellectual property. But as we've seen, these strategies haven't exactly panned out as hoped. Instead of bringing Beijing to the negotiating table ready to make concessions, they've pushed China to diversify their partnerships and ramp up their own production capabilities. They're not just finding new suppliers, they're getting better at growing and making what they need themselves, from biotechnology to precision agriculture. This shift has meant a tougher playing field for U.S. businesses. Our farmers, manufacturers, and whole communities are feeling the pinch of lost sales and opportunities, while China is building up its self-reliance and resilience in the global market. Looking ahead, we need to think about how to turn this ship around. Maybe it's time for a shift from confrontation to cooperation. We're talking about lowering barriers, ramping up dialogue, and ensuring intellectual property is respected. This isn't just good for the U.S., it's essential for restoring balance in U.S. China trade relations and could lead to more sustainable, mutually beneficial growth. Folks, as we wrap up, remember, these challenges are tough, but they're not insurmountable. With the right strategies and a focus on collaboration rather than conflict, we can foster an environment where both the U.S. and China can thrive. Thank you for tuning in, and if this discussion struck a chord with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more insights, and join our community. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us keep bringing you the content you care about. Check out our next video popping up on your screen right now, and let's keep making sense of this complicated world together. Stay strong, America!